Hello friends, welcome to the Angular interview question tutorial series. In this tutorial we will see what is the difference between constructor and ngOnInit in Angular. So basically when we are going to create any component in Angular, then we see like that concrete file contain by default it create one constructor and one ngOnInit function. So we will see in this tutorial like what is the uses of all these two and what is the difference between these two. So basically like constructor is a method which will be called whenever we create a new object, like we have seen a constructor in the OOPS. So basically this constructor in the Angular this concept has taken from the OOPS only, and the use of this constructor here is the same like to initialize the object. And as we know, constructor is used to initialize the class member, and it's a concept of object oriented. Basically this is a concept of object oriented, and it's not designed by the Angular, only it is taken from the object oriented. And the constructor doesn't come in Angular lifecycle as well. And constructor is basically a part of ES6 JavaScript class, and constructor called first before the ngOnInit method. Like when we click when we create a file component file, then this file create two method, like one a constructor and another is the ngOnInit. So first this constructor call, then it call the ngOnInit, and the constructor should only be used to inject dependencies. What is the meaning of dependency? In the sense like if I have created a service and I want to consume that service in my component, then those kind of injection between the dependency we can do in the constructor. Like if I have to take a variable of that service type in the constructor only, I can't do that in the ngOnInit. And keep the constructor as simple as possible, because it is useful for the unit testing. And now next is the what is ngOnInit. So ngOnInit comes in the Angular lifecycle hook, and ngOnInit it's a part of Angular, it's a part of Angular lifecycle hook. And ngOnInit called after the constructor call, like first the constructor call, then only ngOnInit called. And ngOnInit method is just a method which is added to the prototype of the class. And ngOnInit called by Angular when component is initialized, like once the component is initialized, then ngOnInit called. And actual business logic performed in the ngOnInit method, like in the constructor we initialize the dependency, and once the constructor call, then only ngOnInit call, and mainly the logic is done in the ngOnInit. And now like when this ngOnInit executed, so as I explained, like ngOnInit will be executed when Angular done with the creating of the component of DOM. Like once the component of DOM is created, then only this ngOnInit called. And ngOnInit will be called after the constructor execution and after first ngOn changes, that we will see within an example in a bit. So basically now the question comes like what is the uses of constructor and ngOnInit. So basically in Angular the constructor is used for injecting dependency, as I explained before, into the component class, nothing much. And keep the constructor as simple as possible, because it is very useful for the unit testing. And constructor is initialized by the JavaScript engine because it's not a part of the Angular. And TypeScript allow us to tell Angular what dependency we require to be mapped against a specific property. So that is the use of the constructor. So like this, like the main use of this constructor is used to initialize the or injecting the dependency. And the ngOnInit basically the use of this is like in Angular, ngOnInit give us the information about the Angular has finished initializing the component, because the initialization happen in the constructor level only. And this phase include the first pass at change detection against the property that we may bind to the component itself, like @ input property. and due to this functionality @input property are available inside the ngOnInit, however are undefined inside the constructor. Like if I have taken any variable of ng input, then this will be available in the ngOnInit. It will not be available inside the constructor, because the constructor is used to initialize. So that is the main uses of this constructor, and this is the basically a life cycle of the Angular. Here we can see like this constructor is calling at first, and it is basically used to injection in the Angular, like service or any dependency we have. For injecting those kind of dependency we use the constructor, and after this constructor we call ngOn changes and then ngOnInit. So that is the basically a life cycle of the Angular. So we will understand like the difference with an example of the constructor and ngOnInit. So let's go to the Visual Studio Code. So basically like when we create any component in the Angular, we can see like when we create any component in the Angular, it create two function for us, and one is the constructor and another is the ngOnInit. So let's create that ngGC, and I'm going to create a student component. So basically this is the command to create the component, as we have seen before as well. So what it do, it create 4 files. So we'll go to the component file, and we can see here like by default it create two functions, one is the constructor and the ngOnInit. So we are going to talk about these two with an example now. So like we are going to implement in the app.component.ts, because it's a by default like a file which is called first. So what I will do, like in the constructor I will take a one console .log. What we are going to see like first like either constructor call or ngOnInit call. So here I am writing constructor called, and I will copy this, and in ngOnInit I'll keep this, and here I will write ngOnInit. So that is a thing. Now we will run this application. So ngserve I will do, and we will see like on the browser which is calling first, like it's a constructor or ngOnInit. So it's take a little bit time to compile. So it is compiling basically. So the compilation is successful. Now let's go on the browser. So on the browser we can see this text. Now let's right click and inspect element. So basically we'll go to this console, and we will see here like we can see like first it is writing like constructor called, then constructor ngOnInit. So basically like let's change this text so it will be clear for us. Now again save it. So it's reloading the page. We will see like we can see like first it call the constructor, then it call the ngOnInit. So we can see here like first it is calling constructor and the ngOnInit. So that is the one difference. And the next is like as we have seen, like this constructor is basically used to initialize the dependency, basically for injecting the dependency. So what I will do in my application, I have a one service called student service. So we will inject this student service in the constructor and ngOnInit. So let's inject it here. So what I will do, I will take a one private variable and service, and I will take it as a student service. So basically like in the constructor I have taken the one type of this student service. So there is a mismatch. So private. So like we have taken one variable of the student service. Now what I will do, same I will declare inside this ngOnInit. So here it will give the compilation error. Like I will take one for the like different variable, and we can see like it is giving compilation error called a parameter property is only allowed in the constructor implementation. So that is the another difference, like dependency only initialized under this constructor, not in the ngOnInit. So that is the another difference we can see here. Now what I will do, I will take an example like of communicating between the component like property ng like @input, like we will see like we have seen here. So basically in this ngOnInit, this property are available inside this ngOnInit. However, these ngOnInit is undefined between the constructor. So how we can define all this? So what I will do, I will take a one parameter of @input, and I will take like student, and the type of this will be, I will make as a any. So basically input is a method. So now next what I will do, this one I will define inside this constructor. So let's take it like this dot student. Same I will take inside this ngOnInit. So basically this ng input will be available inside this ngOnInit, but not in the constructor. So that is the another difference between the constructor and the ngOnInit. So that is all about the ngOnInit and the constructor. So if you have any question or doubt, please comment. Thank you.